Welcome to the Beza Performance live stream. My name is Marshall Henley. I'm the president of Beza, and today we'll be talking about net landed profit again with our friend Richard Sharpe of Competitive Insights. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Marshall. Always a pleasure to be with you.
So let's level set for folks kind of where we're at in this conversation. This is actually the third in the series, and we'll have the series will go on and on and on. But today we're talking about step 3, fire. We've already kind of went through the whole concept of what net landed profit is. It's a way to do transactional level accounting for the cost of this per SKU or per customer or any sort of uh, dimension you want to look at. And to get there, we got to go through step 1 where we create data confidence. If you're going to make executive decisions of the import that we've been talking about to reduce profit leaks, then you're going to need to believe that the data is actionable. And then in step 2, we talked about AIM, which is where we actually create a net landed profit statement. Looks a little bit like an income statement, but it's different because we're not doing cost accounting, or at least we're avoiding as much cost allocation as we can and actually doing direct calculations from the transactional data. And then today we're talking about step 3. I'll let Richard get into that, where we actually start visualizing the data for solution sets. And then step 4 will be coming up on August. We'll talk about how you measure the mitigations to the problems you've tried to accomplish through this process and see if you need to keep going, if you can pivot your focus to a new set of problems using the same data. So back to Richard. Welcome again. What can you tell us about step 3 to get started?
Well, step 3 is all about pinpointing those opportunities that you just talked about.
Hmm.
And, one thing to add, Marshall, what you said is exactly right, are the benefits of these steps. The
Okay.
benefit of ready is really thinking through the information is, as you said just a moment ago, actionable, which means it's trusted and it's repeatable. And the aim is where we're actually getting down to, as you just said, the specific information. And why that's so important is that gives the opportunity for the company to be able to use that as a foundation for all of the different analytics that could be used cross-functionally. And then fire, we basically are then thinking through the initiative. So this is where you actually see a lot of the benefit associated with the targeted initiatives that you want to have. And then measure, which we will cover, as you just said, in a later podcast, really is targeted both to executives as well as to the users to show them the actual progress they're making using this information. So that's what basically we're going to cover today is fire, as we just said. But it's important for everyone to level set exactly where we are on the 4 steps and what the benefits are. So let's look a little bit more into that, if that sounds good, Marshall.
Yeah, let's take a look at your tool. Folks, just to be clear, we're trying to explain, or Richard is explaining how to do net landed profit as a discipline. We're going through these 4 steps, and then we'll get into the kind of nitty gritty in the future, starting in late August. But what you're looking at is actually the tool set that we use with Competitive Insights technology. You could try to do this with your own technology. Obviously, there's some advantages to using this particular set of analytical tools, but we'll save the sales pitch for some other time. We're just trying to get you through the functional steps that we're following. So with that, I'll kick it back to you, Richard.
Okay, very good. Well, let's just go ahead and talk a little bit about fires, and that's what the podcast today is all about.
Mhm.
As you can see on the left side of the screen, we have a whole series of different modules where we're using that information from AIM to look at product management, product portfolio, customer performance and segmentation. And today we're going to focus on channel and regional management.
Okay.
And what we're going to do there is just show you the power of being able to pinpoint and drill in on specific opportunities to lower costs and to be able to protect or increase your margins in these inflationary times.
So this is one of literally hundreds of different approaches to using net landed profit as a pinpointing problem solving technique for
Yeah, it,
profit.
it, it, it it's designed so that cross-functionally you're getting value at this, whether you're in sales or supply chain or marketing or finance. It's all based on one version of the truth. What
Yeah.
these modules are doing is allowing you to focus in on the area that you have the most interest for.
Okay.
Yep. So let's start off by resetting our thinking on net landed profit. And so basically, what we're going to do is we're just quickly review what we talked about in the last
Mhm.
podcast.
Okay.
And let's pull that up real quickly. And you will remember that we have the capability to have all of the line items of revenue and costs associated with whatever dimensions we want to look at: channel, customer, product, etc. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to focus, as I said, on the actual regional analysis. And as you can see, these view has the different states that we do business in. Look at the
Okay.
first one, Pennsylvania, and we
Yep.
see all the sales associated with the state, the costs associated with the state. But what's really interesting, Marshall, is if you look down at the standard margin, which is what people would normally do, you would think you're doing pretty well in Pennsylvania at 34% margin. But when you actually address all of the different ways revenues are reduced and costs, you're down to a negative 3%. So quite a bit different view when you actually look at cost to serve and net landed profit.
And
And
again, this is not what you could ever get out of an accounting system using cost allocation. You would not
that
see this.
peanut butter spread or any form of
Right.
allocation, you'd never get to this because you've got to trust. If you're going to look at a wholesale change for the state of Pennsylvania, you want to trust that every number you see here is right.
Yeah.
Very important and for it to be actionable. So now that we can see that we can drill this down, in this case by state, let's take a little look now at the how can we use that information to actually pinpoint the opportunities that we've been talking about.
Okay.
So let's take a quick look at that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that information, instead of going from a tabular perspective, we're going to go to a map perspective, a geographical perspective. And as you can see on the map, we have, this is of the United States, of course, and we have different sized bubbles and different colors within those bubbles. So green means that it is a profitable customer. The actual yellow means it's marginal, and the pink red is basically an unprofitable customer. So right away, we can see that we have a whole dispersed performance of different customers in every state. And what we
Mhm.
want to be able to do is say, what can we do with this information to actually improve the performance of the company? Whether we want to do it for the US, we want to do it for a region, we want to do it for a specific state. So let's drill in a little bit more. So specifically, now what we're going to do is we're going to look at just 3 states. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, let's take a quick look. Oh, I'm so sorry, Marshall.
Okay.
At these 3 states, which is South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. And when we say, all right, that's what we want to look at. So we're going to actually view the report now. And basically, it's going to show us just those states and the actual profitable performance of the customers that are in that state. So now this is a much easier view if I was just concentrating on this region to
Mhm.
see that I have a very unprofitable customer in Alabama. I have also a very unprofitable customer in Georgia, and there are a lot of sales. And I have another one in South Carolina. And we're also looking at is what facilities are serving these customers. So as you can see, Tennessee is serving a lot of Alabama, and you go down into Georgia, which is servicing both Georgia and the state of South Carolina. So that's interesting just to be able to see it. But what gets even more interesting is to pinpoint one of these customers and say, what's going on with this customer? Why is that customer unprofitable? So let's take a little deeper dive. We're going to pick out this customer, which you would see the name of the customer versus just the number, and say, okay, that's who I want to focus on. And when I do that, what I'm going to be able to do is see specific information for that customer. So as you can see, it's the same time period we had in the NLP, which can be changed, of course. And we're looking at the sales, we're looking at the actual cost to serve, the profit, and the margin associated with this one customer in South Carolina. Now, if you look at the actual performance, when you look at the drivers, you can see the units sold, obviously, and other information. But let's go down into a little bit more of a specific detail. The revenue, let that light line represents is a benchmark. And so
Okay.
that's the benchmark of similar customers. And we want to be able to compare this customer to the other benchmark customers. Does that make sense so far,
Yeah.
Marshall?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think everybody caught it, but this particular customer was the big red dot in Pennsylvania, the negative 49% net landed profit, which again would not show up in your cost accounting model in your income statement or your
Right.
profit analysis coming out of your accounting system or whatever
Yep.
analysis tool you're using.
Very, very similar to Pennsylvania, but this was a customer in South Carolina.
Okay,
So
sorry. Yep,
very similar performance,
I'm bad at
but
geography.
that's all right. We'll learn together.
Yeah.
So anyway, so let's look at the baseline compared to just the expenses, the cost for this customer. As you can see, every area of cost for this customer, from sourcing costs, air shipments, etc., is higher than the benchmark of similar customers. So right
Mhm.
there, we can see we've got a problem. Our
Yeah.
costs are much higher than what they are for the average customer in this group, and we need to explore that. Same thing as you look down into the actual specifics of that, you can now see the NLP view where we are looking again just for this customer, the specifics associated with the actual revenue and cost, and then the margin over time. So this customer is consistently has
Mhm.
negative profit performance. Look at Q4 of 2018, which is, of course, just sample data, but they're 58% negative performance. And that is incredible given that what we thought we were just having a little bit of a bad quarter at 2.1 negative, but it's actually 58%. And that's true, as you can see, across the board.
Yeah, there's a bit of a
Okay,
trend there, isn't there? The year looks
absolutely.
bad, but the trend looks worse.
It absolutely does. And so this is the pinpointing that we talked about before, where
Right.
we want to actually see specific information that we can take action on. So, but this gets a little bit more detailed. Let's go a
Yeah.
little bit further with this to see what people should be thinking about. So, what are the products that this customer is actually buying? So that would be a very logical next question, right?
Sure.
And to look at why those products are so negative.
At the
So
SKU
let's
level.
take at the SKU level.
Yeah.
So what we've done, we talked about this in earlier podcasts.
Yeah.
We've broken the actual products that this customer is buying into different buckets. So we have buckets of where they're actually making money with certain products that are being sold to that customer, all the way down to what products are unprofitable. And if you look at the actual number of products that are unprofitable being sold to this customer, it is by far the largest number at 4,700 products that are all negative being sold to this one customer. And
Mhm.
look at the actual profit loss associated with it, $31 million that we're losing over that period of time with this one customer. So clearly a way to immediately affect the bottom line and immediately lower your costs because you're able to drill in on why is that happening just for this customer and be
Yeah, that
able to
doesn't
get
mean we may kick this customer to the curb, but clearly what's available to us right off the bat is uh, well, way more than 31 million because there's pretty poor performance in the other categories as well.
yeah, absolutely. So, but again, it's pinpointing. So let's get a little bit more, even more specific. The idea is you don't want, when you're building this for your organization, you don't want the user to have to go through tons and tons of reports to try to
Right.
find out what's going on. You want the
Yeah.
system to do that work for you. So let's take a look at that. So now what we did is we said, just show me the unprofitable products that this customer is buying. And I can obviously do that for any of the groupings that we have there. But look at the first one. Only one product. They're actually selling a little under $2 million to this customer for that one product, but they are losing a tremendous amount of money, $1.6 million on 1.8 million in sales. So, and if you look at the trending there, you can see this is not just a one-time thing. This is consistent negative performance. And so that's really interesting because basically now you can look at that performance and say, what can we do? As you say, not to fire the customer, but to
Right.
change something about that customer to help improve their performance, which might be service levels, it might be discounts, it might be pricing. There's a whole number of different things that you can actually move or influence to make this product for this customer act in a better way. So then you can go and look at the specifics for that actual product, and you can see that that specific information for that product for that customer is basically giving you more insight, and that's what it's really all about. In
Okay.
in fire, it's about being able to pinpoint those opportunities. If that makes sense, Marshall.
It does. Yeah. So I think we've talked this before, but I'll just say it again. This methodology of pinpointing is a little bit like doing, a fishbone diagram in lean or 8-step problem solving, to using a fishbone diagram as part of 8-step problem solving to get to the point where you have very clear understanding of the problem at a level that's actionable. And
Right.
in lean, we always say, the problem tends to, sorry, the solution tends to fall out of the data, becomes pretty obvious once you have the right data, where you can see the root cause of the problem.
Right. And it's data that you trust
Yeah.
on a repeatable basis. Because if you don't trust this information, you're not going to take the action, and there'll be internal, you know, uh, arguing, if you will, with
Yeah.
regard to what's right and what's wrong and who should do what. You want to get
So
that all off the table.
yeah, and obviously we're not advocating you would necessarily. We My point is we don't have any solutions we're recommending to fix this problem. We're just getting down to the specific SKUs, and they're losing the money with a specific client, so that there's a really small target to go after in terms of identifying that, getting back some of that 31 million that you're losing from this client. So
Yeah.
um, and in doing so, I think, we can say, well, obviously one solution might be getting rid of this client altogether and just not having them as a client anymore. But that that's probably not going to happen without everyone being on board that this is actually, this is real data. Like, they can trust these numbers, even if
Yeah.
though that may not be the solution that you choose. Pretty much any solution that you choose is going to affect the client. You might have service level changes or pricing changes you need to negotiate. All of that, if you're going to take that action, you better trust what you're looking at.
Absolutely. And Marshall, you just hit it on the head. The answer is not just one answer. It could be, as
Right.
you just said, sales, or it could in discounts, or it could be in pricing, or it could be in cost structures. So you want it to be used and viewed and trusted cross-functionally,
Yeah.
because what you do for this customer in order to improve performance might be very different than you had that unprofitable customer that we saw in Georgia. And
Yeah.
being able to get to that look at it in multiple dimensions is exactly what you said. It's going to pinpoint what the facts are, and then being able to come up with a solution the organization all buys into. That's right.
That's
So
exciting.
that
This is a Go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
I say that that's just a small example when you're actually in fire and you're looking at the region and you're being able to say specifically, what is it that's going on in this state or this region or across the country.
Yeah. And so, what we were looking at is, in this specific situation, unprofitable customers by region, and then drilling down, finding the most unprofitable customer in a particular region that was really causing that region to be unprofitable, and looking at the SKUs that they buy and focusing on the SKUs that are unprofitable, so that we're not, looking at the whole ocean of stuff that customers buying. And in their case, it
Yep,
was pretty much the whole ocean. They were losing money on a lot of stuff. But then that gets us to the solution set that we might want to take, which, again, we're
right,
not proposing anything specifically here. We're just saying you gotta be looking at the right data to do it, and it's got to be actionable. So
right.
one way to think about this, again, folks, is I'm just going to bring the diagram up, is we're looking at this step 3 fire. And so that's the pinpointing that gives you those actionable insights. And when you have that, you can make some changes. But those changes need to be measured against what your desired outcome is. And that's where
That's
we'll be
right.
getting into, on August 9th, the measure. How do you measure and track the performance of those profit recuperation and mitigation strategies that you're putting in place.
Right. And using effective benchmarking to help with that. So you're not comparing all products to one product. You're comparing similar products or similar customers within a channel or within a region. But it's really important that you have the information to a point where you can have a healthy and productive uh, discussion on what you should do for the good
Yeah.
of the enterprise.
So just a
Absolutely.
minute on the benchmarking. We've talked about this. We're not benchmarking folks against, uh, some sort of Hoover data or something. We're talking about their internal benchmarks that's generated from their own data. I mean, what would you
Yeah,
expect from this customer or a region of customers and the SKUs they buy based on kind of your go-to-market model that's generating the benchmarks
that's
that
right.
you're using to compare?
Benchmarks of similar products or similar customers. That's absolutely right. When you use external sources for benchmarking, there's nothing wrong with that,
Hmm.
but it's been our experience that you can't really tell exactly what went into the benchmark
Right.
that they're using, right? And so you can be very easily comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah.
And what you want to be able to do is say, no, I'm using my own information from this a very reliable source, and I'm using that to create benchmarks that make sense for my business to track performance. You're absolutely right, Marshall. Yep.
And just pointing this out again, I mean, it's important. The internal benchmarks that we showed are based on net landed profits. So we're not getting into the allocations that kind of skew the numbers and make things that are on the low end of profitability look more profitable than they really are, and the things that are on the high end of profitability look less profitable than they really are. You're seeing, a pretty accurate depiction of what the benchmark ought to be, at least compared to what you're doing internally. So I like
Th-
that
th-
example.
and tracking it over time.
Yeah.
So am I getting closer to the benchmark performance this quarter than I was last or this month? It's just being able to, feel good about decisions that are working and correct things that are not working. And then what are the new opportunities, which we'll cover and measure, that have surfaced that weren't there the last time? All of that is what you want to be able to represent to your users so that they are solving the problem versus trying to dig into the data.
So just to tease kind of what's coming after August 9th. So August 9th, we'll get into the measure, and that'll help folks kind of understand, um, the all four steps. We'll conclude just the macro steps at that point. But then I think we're going to move into other step three visualizations for different kinds of problems that we want to take a look at. So to tease those kind of different kinds of visualizations for different types of problems, let's talk about what you can use net landed profit for in step three.
So that's a very good point. So what we just covered was someone who's interested in looking at customers by some form of territory alignment, and then getting to the root cause of the issues. But if you can use the exact same information. It's a great point, Marshall. You're not recreating another database. You're not establishing another source of information. You're using the exact same source of data that we just covered in region to focus on other problems. So, for
Yeah,
instance, supply chain risk management, being able to look at how do I look at this information to both proactively and reactively protect our organization's ability to generate profit, or inventory management, not replacing your inventory management systems, but being able to supplement them with profitable performance. So
yeah,
is that inventory that's sitting in these three DCs all contributing the same amount of profit that I would expect, and maybe not, which again helps you to realign, the inventory management decisions. Getting into customer segmentation and product segmentation. How does
yeah,
my portfolio working? Is it working well? Should I rationalize products? Should I change something about the products? A big effort going on in multiple industries right now is to say we need to simplify our portfolio.
yeah.
But there are
Yes.
lots of ways to use the data, but it is the same data.
Okay. Yeah, we're excited about this on the S&OP side. Doug Dedman, the president of DVM Systems, who you know well, We do the same thing there. We generate a lot of questions. We don't answer the questions. S&OP creates like a focus on questions, and one of the questions that we have to answer typically is, okay, we've got some constraints. That's what S&OP is for. Well, here's some constraints. We've got more orders, potential orders, over the next 12 months or 24 months, whatever your window is rolling. Then we can do, and we can do some supply side improvements to try and increase what we're going to do there. But it doesn't make sense to do those if we're just adding negative profit, right? And we're adding
Right.
losses to our approach. So having net landed profit is another pinpointing lens we can look at, and fundamentally that answers the question in that scenario. One possible answer, it's not the only answer, to which customers do we need to serve in the short term when we're constrained, might be the customers that are contributing the most profit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good lens, right?
Yep.
For S&OP.
If you're in product allocation mode, that's a very good lens,
Sure.
because why would you prioritize selling the few products you have to unprofitable um, customers,
Yeah.
and the product sale is unprofitable? That makes no sense.
Well, you might, but it would be for some sort of reason that has to be more important than the profit that you're giving up. The opportunity cost of that lost profit should be in view. The problem is it's not generally in view, and that's why it's such a powerful
Hmm.
technique to combine with S&OPs. So,
That's
um,
right, Marshall. Absolutely correct.
so any other teasers we can throw out there? So we've talked about supply chain, both proactive and reactive risk management. We talked about
Yep.
inventory management. What else?
Well, there's lots of them that you can go into besides the customer information and customer segmentation and product segmentation. You can look at, leakage, profit leakage. Where are we actually leaking profit based on the end-to-end performance? Remember in the beginning, we talked about this data is from the very sourcing of product
Yes.
all the way to the final delivery to the end customer. So there's a lot of information about where am I buying it, how am I moving it, where am I storing it, how am I handling it, how am I delivering it in the final mile, whether that's a B2B model or a B2C model. It's the same question. And so being able to identify for this particular product, we are leaking, this amount of profit based on the fact that we changed the mode of transportation for interfacility, and that has driven our margin down to very slim, if not negative performance. So it's all about giving that information to the functional users that are
Yes.
going to take that information and run with it.
Well, good stuff. Folks, if you haven't already, mash your like or your subscribe or your follow button in whatever platform you're viewing this on, and that way you can make sure you see other informational content from the Beza live stream. Richard, really appreciate your time today again, and we'll catch up on August 9th on the next step, step 4, which is measure, and then we'll push on into some of these teased areas that we talked about for step 3 for visualization and pinpointing in these different areas. So
Yeah.
thanks
Well,
again
thank you.
for
Thank you,
yeah.
Marshall. And thanks everyone who's joined us. We really are trying